The first thing that came to my mind when I heard about a VR Metro game was, yes, of course. There's no franchise in this entire world that would be a better fit for VR than Metro. The one thing that always made the Metro game stand out is the incredible dedication to immersion. They are all full of little immersive elements like the wiping of your gas mask, the cranking of your flashlight, the pumping of your pneumatic weapons, that don't really add much to gameplay but make the game feel so much more real, and they managed to do that by just making you push a button. Imagine for a moment how much the whole experience could be elevated in VR with motion controls. Imagine. Well, you don't have to imagine any longer because Metro Awakening is here. And I'm going to tell you right away, this is a great Metro game. A great addition to the franchise, and it's a decent VR game on top of that. That is unfortunately not without some compromises in key areas. Let's get into it. It is the year 2029, 15 years after the Great War. A small pocket of humans have survived down in the tunnels of the Moscow metro. With the surface being a radioactive wasteland, this might as well be, at least to your knowledge, the last remnants of humanity. In this game you play as s.t.a.l.k.e.r, a doctor who must befallen the unfortunate fate of being married, because your wife is batshit crazy and off her meds she puts the whole station in danger.
If it wasn't Max, then who? And why would they open those damn tunnels?
Well, I can guess who. And as to why, same reason she destroyed the mushroom farm.
Ah, got it.
What did she do now? Do we have to put her in a cage? The game starts out as a journey to find some antipsychotic drugs. Then it turns into a journey to find your wife, until it ultimately ends up as a journey to find yourself. Your true self. Metro Awakening is a strictly linear story-driven horror shooter. This is not a continuation of the Metro franchise after Exodus. 4A Games are currently working on that one. This is a journey back to the past, to the old Metro games, confined to the underground tunnels, together with the horrid things that lurk in the depths of the abandoned tracks. The gameplay is surprisingly story-rich. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of exposition, face-to-face or overcomes, sometimes even a bit too much. It's all really well written, the voice acting is incredible, it's one of the best voiced VR games I've ever played, but sometimes s.t.a.l.k.e.r was getting a bit annoying. He's always like, I am a doctor, I am a man of science, I do not believe in the supernatural. Even when like supernatural shit is going on all around him. Yeah, we got it, you are the polar opposite of the man you are going to be at the end of the game. We got it the first time, not necessary to repeat it the 15th time. It's not a big deal, but sometimes I just missed Artyom, sometimes I missed the silent protagonist.
I've heard tales of time anomalies down there in some tunnels.
Tales, Max, tales. We're not in Wonderland here. It's just Moscow. After a nuclear war, laws of physics don't allow for such consequences, even of an atomic blast. It can't alter the time and space, alright?
When you explore the eerie Metro tunnels, everything will feel immediately familiar, at least if you have played the first two Metro games. This right here is Metro Awakening's greatest triumph, that it manages to recreate the feel of the original game to such a great degree. That is in part of course thanks to 4A Games, who provided original assets and models that were used here, but it is more than that. It's more than just assets that make the feel of a game. It's the lighting, the soundscapes, the dialogue and voice acting. It's the incredible score. It's a combination of all of that. It's even more than that. Being in VR, Awakening manages to bring some of the more immersive elements of the original games that were restricted by the flat game medium to completion. This is how a Metro game should be played. This is where it really comes to life, and Vertigo Games did a great job with it. There's a pretty big asterisk here. We come back to this later in the video after I've gushed about how great the game is and we come to the section where I tell you why the game sucks. But for now, all the VR interactions that are here are actually incredible. well, most of them. From opening doors or loot containers, climbing ladders, starting generators, to the more personal interactions like wiping your gas mask or using your charger. You'll have to connect your charger to some electrical doodads from time to time, and when you pull out this wire, you get an ever so slight rumble in your controllers that feels so satisfying. All the VR interactions here are completely jank-free and polished to perfection. It's really impressive. While we are at the topic of VR mechanics, this is for the most part a first-person shooter. There's really not much to say about that. Vertigo Games have tons of experience making VR shooters. They pretty much made the first real VR shooters and they have been making them ever since. The shooting is great. All the weapons feel great to use. Every single one of them is useful in its own right. They have great haptics, satisfying reload mechanics. This is a technically flawless VR shooter. But you will not be able to solve every problem by shooting it in the face as much as you might want to. There are other dangers against which mere weapons are useless. Knowing whose story we are playing, and by the way, that's no secret or spoiler, right? Even though the trailer did not spell it out, you'll get called Khan in like the first few minutes of the game. You're supposed to know whom you play. Knowing whose story we are playing here, you'd probably expect to delve more into the supernatural side of the Moscow metro. And you'd be absolutely right. Yes, this is the first-person shooter, but above all else, is this a horror game? The metro games always had some horror elements to them, and Khan would always be there and guide you through them. So it's only right that Awakening goes hard in this direction. The game is very dark. You always try to cling to the tiny light spot your miserable headlamp provides, delving deeper into the area of the metro where other humans dare not tread, and feral mutated animals are the least of your worries. What the hell was that? Oh god. Damn, that scared me. I hate everything about this. In the intro I said that the game is not without its flaws, so let's talk about all the things I did not like about it. Let me bring up the biggest point right away. The game world feels very static. There's very little to actually interact with here. There are dedicated loot containers you can open, but all drawers, cupboards, nightstands, all of that is not interactable. There are only a few items you can actually pick up. In this section here are these torches laying on the floor, which I wanted to pick up so much, but you can't. Look, maybe that's not a big deal for you. Maybe you are just interested in how the shooting mechanics work because you would not want to pick up random useless stuff anyway, and that's fine. Then you'll probably be very happy with the game. But for me it's kind of a big deal. 4 or 5 years ago we have seen an emergence of ultra immersive VR games with the likes of Boneworks or Half-Life Alyx that allowed you to pick up everything, to interact with everything. That were the glory days. Unfortunately, in the last years the trend was to rein that aspect of VR games in more and more, and in my opinion that is the wrong direction for VR games to develop. That is all obviously more or less important depending on genre, but for a game that tries to be super immersive like this one, having so little world interaction is a very big red flag for me. That's especially disappointing because Vertigo Games have actually made a better job with that 8 years ago with Arizona Sunshine.
She always said not to go off alone. But then she did it anyway. I waited and waited, but even the trains never came, and I got worried that maybe something happened, and she got lost. She does that sometimes.
I previously said that all VR interactions that are in the game are flawless, but there's an exception to that. There are some overlapping spots on your body that do different things depending on context. Example, you put stuff into your backpack by dropping them in front of your chest. When you have a gas mask equipped, you change the gas mask filter by bringing the new filter to your face. But these two sections overlap like a lot. Every time when I wanted to put a gas mask filter into my inventory, I would accidentally replace the filter on my equipped gas masks instead. I also pulled out my healing injector all the time when I did not want to. These things could do with a lot of cleaning, with clearer defined not overlapping areas on your body. Another part of the game I did not enjoy is stealth, especially in the early game where you have next to no tools at your disposal to make use of in stealth sections. You can throw stuff to distract enemies. That did not really work for me most of the time. You can bong an enemy in the head with your fist to knock them out. That feels really bad, but it's a bit hilarious, probably not the intended effect. They could have at least given us a shank or something. The good news is, when you get spotted you can just shoot everyone and that's fun. Later in the game you get access to more silent weapons and then the stealth sections get more manageable and then they are okay. I very much enjoyed the crossbow.
I'm empty.
Okay, weapons. Weapons are great, but you know how the Metro franchise has these really iconic pneumatic weapons that work with air pressure and you need to pump them from time to time to keep the pressure up? How cool would those be in VR with motion controls? How the hell they failed to put the most iconic weapons of the Metro franchise that would be so awesome to use in VR, how they failed to put those into their VR Metro game is truly beyond my understanding. That would have been such an easy slam dunk victory. Baffling. Well, it's probably a question of budget. Most of the guns feel exactly like the guns in Arizona Sunshine. Having to implement a whole new mechanic for them would have a cost. Same for the interactivity of the environment. All the assets provided by 4A Games were made for a flat game. They would have probably needed a whole lot of reworking to add the Boneworks-esque interactivity that I have come to expect for VR games. And then again, that would have been expensive. Vertigo Games are not a huge studio, and these are the parts where you clearly feel the budget constraints. I would have preferred if they had taken another year or so to implement these things, but yeah, that might not have been possible for them. One word on combat difficulty. There are 3 difficulty settings to choose from. I was playing on normal and I don't recommend. At least if this is not your first VR shooter, play immediately on hard please. The combat is so forgiving that I actually found it to be immersion breaking. The game never tires to tell you that you are no soldier, you are just a doctor. But you can tank an entire magazine of AK rounds point blank to the face, no problems, not even a scratch. And you completely heal like 5 seconds after taking damage every time, it's ridiculous. Later you get access to this blowpipe, which is a fun weapon, a one-shot kill. Well, that is when you use it. You yourself are apparently completely immune. So maybe that's a bug and will get fixed, entirely possible, but even if it is, at least on normal difficulty, you are a nearly indestructible super tank. A super tank doctor, not a super tank soldier.
Oh, I hate that.
Also earlier I said that the environments feel immediately familiar, maybe a bit too much. It gets a bit repetitive. Not only that the metro tunnels all look pretty much the same, it's also that the game reuses whole sections of the game world several times. So it's not a complete copy. When you go through an area a second or third time, you'll usually have different threats to fight against, but still. There are a few memorable set pieces, but these are few and far between. It's a bit samey. The visuals are fine, it pretty much looks like the first Metro game, which is 15 years old by now. I guess that's okay for VR games these days. Some of the facial animations are pretty terrible though. Some animations in general are pretty outdated. Although these guys somehow reminded me of animatronics in a theme park, that was kind of endearing.
Return to Earth, O greatest of the warriors of the past. Like you have shed blood before to establish eternal peace. Now we must shed blood for eternal peace to prevail.
So after all these negative points, I want to make absolutely clear that I love the game. It's not perfect, there are some serious missed opportunities here, but it's a genuinely good Metro game with solid writing, excellent voice acting, excellent music, and excellent VR shooting mechanics. It plays great, it's seriously scary, I had a good time. I have something between 11 and 12 hours on the clock after my playthrough, so about as much as Metro 1 and 2 combined, which were both pretty short games. It's a decently sized campaign, even if the environment design gets a bit repetitive. I regretted a bit playing on normal difficulty, but that gives me a good reason for a second playthrough, which I will absolutely do after I've recovered a bit and after my spider-related nightmares have stopped. That's it, Metro Awakening. I do recommend. It's not perfect, but it's a good VR game, probably one of the best of the year so far. See you.